Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, we're doing episode 224, A Promise is a Promise. The episode begins with Oliver finally figuring out what he should do to help Ash and the gang after seeing that the underwater base had sunk underwater again, determining that he should go and help as he jumped off the boat, leaving Luca by herself as he sailed off with his lantern toward the underwater base. Meanwhile, at the underwater base, Ash and the gang, along with Richie, were currently still in the cage, and Lugia and Silver were inside a cage as well. Or rather, Silver was held in the cage, and Lugia was held in the contraption. Dr. Nambo was debating which of the two Lugia he should use for his experiment of amplifying their power and using it to create a beam, and determined that he should obviously use the parent Lugia since it was stronger, so he instructed Butch and Cassidy to bring the baby Lugia, Silver, to another room so that he could save Silver for later if he needed him for a different plan. And he also wanted to have Silver in another room because this could potentially make the grown Lugia upset, and that could help him amplify its power, as the anger would obviously make it more powerful. Nambo, Butch, and Cassidy take one last look at both of the Lugia together as they admire the fact that they were able to successfully capture them, and then Butch and Cassidy take the baby Lugia off in its cage. Meanwhile, in the other room in the underwater base, Richie, Brock, and Misty had woken up along with Ash to find they were inside the cage. They remembered what had happened, with Ash and Richie specifically remembering the promise they had made to Lugia to reunite it with Silver, and realizing that they had failed this. So, both Ash and Richie declared that they were going to try and find a way to escape the cage that they were put in, and free both of the Lugia. Unfortunately, Ash and Richie lost some of their determination, as when they tried to escape with their Pokemon, they realized that the last thing they had remembered before they passed out was their Pikachu trying to defend them, and noticed that when their Pikachu weren't there, that meant that they must have been captured. They then noticed that they didn't have any of their other Pokeballs either, so all of their other Pokemon must have been taken as well. So they debated how they could escape with no Pokemon to help them. Just then, Dr. Namba came into the room that Ash and the gang and Richie were in, as he turned on the lights and greeted them, introducing himself, as he twirled his mustache. Ash and the gang were obviously not fooled by his nice introduction, as they knew that he was the one responsible for ordering Lugia and Silver's capture, and questioned why he wanted them, and what his plan was. Nambo was cocky, so he decided to share his plan with Ash and the gang, since he was about to implement it anyways, which was to take the Lugia's power and transform it into energy that he could control, stating his belief that Pokemon, as well as nature, should serve all of mankind. Essentially, Pokemon and the planet itself should just be tools for humanity's advancement. Ash and the gang were obviously angry at Dr. Nambo's plans, and countered with their belief that Pokemon obviously shouldn't be used as tools and should instead be viewed as your best friends. Dr. Nambo simply laughed at this, as he stated that if you made Pokemon your friends, then they wouldn't get angry, and he wanted Pokemon to get angry, as he knew that that would amplify their power, which was why he specifically designed a device that was able to make the Mons angry so that their power could be amplified. Clarifying that this device he was talking about was the same device that Butch and Cassidy had used on their Houndour and Hitmontop to make angry, bragging about how effective the devices were, as he revealed that they were called Namba's Nasty Pokemon Provokers. Ash and the gang questioned Dr. Namba on what the purpose of this device was, since it didn't seem related to his plan with Lugia whatsoever, but Dr. Namba corrected them, stating that this invention was his way of practicing for Lugia, since this invention involved utilizing the angry energy that a Pokemon released and having it increase its power, and that's exactly what he wanted to do to Lugia. He wanted to take Lugia's angry energy from having its child kidnapped and use that to increase its power before turning its power into a beam, explaining his belief that rage was what made a Pokemon the most powerful. Dr. Namba then declared that if he was able to make the Lugia angry, then its power would be so immense that he would be able to have control over the entire goddamn world, since if a Houndour and Hitmontop were able to become stronger despite not already being that strong, a Pokemon that was already strong, like Lugia, would just gain an amount of power that was off the charts. Essentially, weak Pokemon become strong, strong Pokemon become stronger. Woo! Ash and Richie try and cut off Dr. Namba's long-ass rant by demanding to know where their Pikachu had gone, but Dr. Namba just laughs and shows Ash and the gang the two Pikachu strapped to a table, explaining he was about to use Namba's Nasty Pokemon Provokers on them to make them angry. Meanwhile, Oliver was looking for Ash and the gang underwater, trying to locate where the underwater base had gone with his lantern, and he eventually managed to find it and went inside a shaft into the base, although he left his lantern outside. Likely because he might not have caught Lantern in a Pokeball, so he might not have had a way to keep it safe inside without water. Meanwhile, Team Rocket, still in their regular Team Rocket outfits, were able to utilize this to their advantage and bypass the security lock on the base's control room, since they were trusted Team Rocket members. Why did they want to look in the control room in the first place, you may ask? Well, it was because they were desperate to find Lugia so that they could steal it back from Butch and Cassidy. When Team Rocket enter the control room, though, they don't see Lugia or its child, but they instead see Ash and the gang captured in the cage. James and Meowth were glad to see their enemies finally locked up, but Jessie, on the other hand, suggested that they actually free Ash and the gang, stating that they could use them to their advantage, explaining that if Ash and the gang were free, then they would battle Butch Cassidy and Dr. Namba, and that would distract them enough so that Team Rocket could swoop in and capture the Lugia for themselves. So with that, Jessie ordered James to keep looking for the Lugia on the cameras, and ordered Meowth to try and find the key for the cage. After not being able to locate the Lugia on the cameras, James decides to just go help Jesse and Meowth find the key. However, when they go out of the control room, the first thing they see is Oliver and a random-ass Team Rocket grunt, as the Team Rocket grunt had spotted Oliver make his way in the base through a vent and immediately grabbed him, trying to hurt him. Upon seeing Oliver and remembering that he was currently traveling with Ash and the gang, they determine that he could be useful in their plan, so they go up to the Team Rocket grunt and tell him to leave, explaining that they would handle Oliver themselves. So the grunt obliges and leaves the area, as Jesse and James grab him, and Oliver still tries to struggle to free himself, but stops when Jesse whispers into his ear and lies that Jesse and James were superheroes in disguise and they planned to save Ash and the gang, but they wanted his help. Oliver questions if they were really superheroes since he had never heard of them before, and Jesse assures him that they were, which causes the gullible kid to believe them. Jesse then explains that Ash and the gang happened to be captured, as we then go back to Dr. Namba and Ash and the gang, where Dr. Namba was showing Ash and the gang their restrained Pikachu on the table and was about to put the devices on them, lowering down a hook to do so. However, before he can do so, Ash and the gang try and stop him by pleading him to stop, and this causes Dr. Namba to laugh for a little bit at how desperate Ash and the gang were. Since this caused enough of distraction, Dr. Namba wasn't able to place the devices on the two Pikachu before Oliver showed up through a vent. Since Meowth had discovered the code, he had told it to Oliver, so Oliver knew it, and he pressed in 4453 on the cage's lock, opening it and freeing Ash and the gang so that Ash and Richie could retrieve their Pikachu. Since upon exiting the cage, Ash immediately tackled Dr. Namba, manages to break off the hook lowering the device before it could reach him or Richie's Pikachu, and then uses the hook to destroy the device that was lowering the hooks in the first place, also breaking Pikachu's restraints as a result of this, so the Pikachu could go free. Brock and Misty, also free, then go and grab all of the Pokeballs of theirs, which were just happened to be lying on a table in the room, so they were an easy grab. Ash and the gang and Richie then thank Oliver for saving them, but question how he was able to get the password for the cage lock, to which Oliver states that he got it from some superheroes, unbeknownst to Team Rocket's true identity. Unfortunately, Ash and the gang couldn't escape the room before Dr. Namba, despite being tackled, was able to get back up and press the alarm, alerting all of the Team Rocket grunts, as well as Butch and Cassidy, to the area, as they stopped Ash and the gang and Oliver and Richie right as they exited the room. They didn't just have Butch Cassidy and the Team Rocket members themselves to deal with, though, as Butch and Cassidy then sent out their Hitmontop and Houndour to fight Ash and the gang, and to make matters worse, Hitmontop and Houndour still had their angered-enhancing devices on them. Houndour and Hitmontop start with their enhanced flamethrower and rolling kick respectively, but both of Ash and Richie's Pikachu are able to dodge, and then Ash and Richie come up with a plan not to attack Houndour and Hitmontop directly, but instead aim for the devices to destroy them, and they manage to do just that when both Pikachu use Thunderbolt on the devices. This catches Houndour and Hitmontop off guard, and also makes them much weaker, so both Pikachu are able to take out Houndour and Hitmontop with a single tackle each, causing Butch and Cassidy to recall them. Butch and Cassidy go to try and send out some other Pokemon that they had on them, but they're stopped when they receive a message over the intercom from Dr. Namba, ordering them to go to the room where Lugia was, since apparently some people had managed to locate it, and they were threatening to steal it. I wonder who the culprits were. Anyways, Butch and Cassidy instantly order the rest of the random Team Rocket grunts to take care of Ash and the gang for them, and follow Dr. Namba's orders as they run over to the room that had Lugia in it to stop whoever was trying to free it. As soon as Butch and Cassidy run into the room where Lugia was, they find out that the culprits were Team Rocket, who had managed to locate the Lugia using the cameras, finally. As James tries to free the Lugia from the contraption, Butch and Cassidy reveal themselves and recognize Jesse, James, and Meowth, and scold them for seemingly trying to betray Team Rocket and get into a fight with them. As they send out their now regular-powered Houndour and Hitmontop, and Jesse and James send out their Arbok and Victreebel respectively. However, Victreebel of course eats James first, before going in for any attack. For once, Jesse and James were actually doing well, as Houndour went for a flamethrower, but it missed, allowing Arbok to sneak up to it and headbutt it, knocking Houndour into one of the support beams for Lugia's contraption that was keeping the Lugia trapped in red lines. Thus the support beams are struck yet again by Hitmontop as it went in for a rolling kick, but Victreebel retaliated with Razor Leaf, sending the Hitmontop flying into the support beams. The support beams are then hit a third time when Hitmontop gets up and retaliates against Victreebel, as Victreebel tried to use Vine Whip, but Hitmontop's Rapid Spin knocked Victreebel into the support. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, they still had to deal with all the random-ass Team Rocket grunts, and they did so as Ash sent out his Totodile and Richie sent out his Pupitar. Pupitar tackled all the Team Rocket grunts, and then Totodile knocked them all out with a water gun. Due to all the grunts being down, and there being no guards throughout the entire base, Ash and the gang were able to search all the rooms, and eventually managed to come across the room that had Silver in it. However, Dr. Namba was there as well, guarding Silver, because he knew that since he sent Butch and Cassidy to guard the main Lugia, it still left Silver vulnerable, so he went to Silver. Because even though he didn't plan to use it for his current plan, he still had other ideas for it. Upon seeing Ash and the gang, Dr. Namba thought it would be a good idea to try and leave with Silver and put him in a more secure room. So he sent out his Electabuzz to try and deal with Ash and the gang, and his Electabuzz happened to have one of his anger-enhancing devices on it, leading Namba to of course claim that his Electabuzz would be unstoppable due to its anger, which Ash and the gang obviously refuted. Dr. Namba ignored the refutes and ordered his Electabuzz to use a Thunder Punch on Ash and Richie's Pikachu, which both Pikachu were able to dodge, sending Electabuzz's Thunder Punch straight into the floor, causing a crater. Ash and Richie then order their Pikachu to try and destroy the Electabuzz's device to make it weaker, just as they did with him on top of Houndour. So, both Pikachu go in for a Thunderbolt, but unfortunately, this Thunderbolt is deflected by Electabuzz's Light Screen. Electabuzz then goes in for a whole bunch of Thunder Punches, hitting both Pikachu relentlessly. Electabuzz then goes in for a Thunderbolt of his own that was enhanced by the device, and this Thunderbolt hits both Pikachu directly. Electabuzz didn't let up, and kept using a rotation of Thunder Punch and Thunderbolt, both of which kept getting an increase in power, as Dr. Namba kept increasing the device's energy levels. Meanwhile, back with Team Rocket versus Butch and Cassidy, Houndour used Flamethrower on Arbok, but Arbok was able to dodge, so the Flamethrower just went straight in to one of Lugia's cage's support beams. The support beams just kept taking a beating as Houndour tries to use Flamethrower on Arbok yet again, and this time it hits, which just caused Arbok to be pushed into another one of the support beams. Man, Lugia's cage was just taking a beating. The supports were taking such a beating that the contraption holding Lugia was beginning to short circuit, indicating that Lugia may be able to get free soon. Jessie was simply just focused on stopping Cassidy and her Houndour though, so she sent out her Wobbuffet to battle as opposed to Arbok, and had it use counter against yet another Flamethrower by Houndour, which unfortunately didn't fully work, because although Wobbuffet was able to deflect some of the Flamethrower back at Butch and Cassidy, some of it also came back at Team Rocket themselves, and in the process hit the last of Lugia's contraption support beams, allowing Lugia to break free, since the contraption exploded. Jessie scolds Wobbuffet as the Lugia instantly gets pissed due to being captured, and releases its anger by firing Aeroblast all around the base, making plenty of holes in the base, although it was trying to hit Team Rocket or Butch and Cassidy. It eventually did manage to hit Team Rocket, sending them blasting off, as they get sent flying through one of the broken walls. With several of the walls broken, this also causes the underwater base to rise to the surface, as it was a protective mechanism to make sure that it didn't flood. So now, the underwater base was back on the surface of the water. The Lugia didn't care about this at all though, it simply just cared about finding its child, Silver, so it went out of the room it was originally in, and started using Aeroblast on several of the walls of other rooms trying to find it, as Silver cried out, hearing the Aeroblasts. Speaking of what was going on in Silver's room, Ash and Richie were still battling against Namba and his Electabuzz, as Namba continued to power up Electabuzz, dialing up the controller that connected to the anger device. Ash and Richie didn't notice this, and were confident that they could win as a result, despite Electabuzz previously beating both Pikachu and Sparky's asses. Ash and Richie order their Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, and it actually manages to make contact on the enraged Electabuzz. This just enrages Electabuzz further though, as it goes in for a Thunder Punch on both of the Pikachu, although since it was so enraged, it manages to miss. Pikachu and Sparky then take the opportunity to go in for yet another Thunderbolt each, but unfortunately, Electabuzz uses Light Screen again to deflect both of the Thunderbolts. This surprised Brock as he was watching, because he expected two attacks hitting the Electabuzz at once to be able to break through the Light Screen, but this wasn't the case. With both Pikachu caught off guard by this, the Electabuzz then used a Thunderbolt, but thankfully, both Pikachu were able to dodge. Ash finally notices the controller that Dr. Namba was using, and points it out to Richie, who comes to the correct conclusion that Namba was using it to enhance the Electabuzz's anger to make it more powerful. So, Richie suggests that Ash use his Pikachu to distract Namba and the Electabuzz, while his Pikachu would sneak up to Namba and destroy the remote control so that Electabuzz couldn't gain any more power. Ash agreed to the idea, and had his Pikachu use Thunderbolt on Electabuzz, and the Electabuzz countered this with Light Screen again. But this didn't matter, as the Electabuzz was distracted, as was Dr. Namba, as he was desperately trying to use his controller to enrage Electabuzz even further, and with both Electabuzz and Namba distracted, Richie's Pikachu took the opportunity to jump up to Namba and tackle him to the ground, and then Thunderbolt him, destroying the controller. The controller being destroyed also short-circuited the device on Electabuzz itself, which canceled the device's effects, turning Electabuzz calm again, and also no longer intensely powerful. So this allowed both of the Pikachu to go up to Electabuzz and use a dual Thunderbolt on it, knocking it out in one hit, since the Electabuzz was also weakened due to the device exploding on it. The defeated Electabuzz goes flying into Dr. Namba, knocking Dr. Namba down as well, as Ash goes up to him and taunts that true power lies in trusting and befriending your Pokemon, not in enraging them. Ash could have kept insulting Dr. Namba all day, but Richie reminded him that freeing Silver, now that they had the chance, was the most important thing. So, Richie sent out his Charmeleon, and Ash sent out his Cyndaquil. Both used Flamethrower, but this was only enough to heat up the cage. Although this gave Misty and Ash an idea, as Misty sent out her Poliwhirl and had to use Water Gun, along with Ash's Totodile, and this now cooled down the cage, which caused the metal to rust, severely weakening it. So, Richie then sent out his Pupitar and had it tackle the cage, breaking it and freeing Silver. Silver immediately jumps down to Oliver, and Oliver eagerly hugs it. While this was going on, Lugia was still using Aeroblast all around the base, destroying it even more, even after it rose up to the surface. So, when Ash and the gang finally left the room with Silver, they happened to encounter the parent Lugia, and Ash attempts to call out to it, but it was too distracted in its rage of trying to destroy the base and find Silver. However, when Silver calls out to it, it immediately catches the parent Lugia's attention, and calms Lugia down, as it was just happy to be reunited with his child. Ash and the gang try to explain themselves, in fear that Lugia would think that Ash and the gang were trying to run off with Silver. So they try their best to explain that they had managed to save it, but before they can finish their explanation, Misty then looks up and notices some rubble as a result of the Aeroblast falling down on them. Ash and the gang instinctively duck to try and shield themselves. But the parent Lugia knew this wouldn't work, so it flies over Ash and the gang and uses Safeguard to destroy the rubble and protect Ash and the gang from it, leading Ash and the gang to realize that Lugia didn't misunderstand them, and it now trusted humans. Despite what Team Rocket did to it, it knew that some humans, like Ash and the gang, were trying to help it, so it helped them back. Ash and the gang thank the Lugia for its assistance as they get back up, and decide that it was probably time to leave the base, as it was about to fully sink due to being immensely destroyed. So, Ash and the gang managed to go to the base's vent that Oliver found before, and jump out into the sea, with their scuba diving gear. With Ash and the gang now swimming away from the base then fully exploded as it sank to the bottom of the sea, seemingly sinking Dr. Namba and all the Team Rocket grunts, and Butch and Cassidy with it. However, by evening, with Ash and the gang long gone by this point, it was revealed that Dr. Namba, Butch and Cassidy, and all the Team Rocket grunts had survived, as they had managed to cling onto several pieces of debris and use it to float back up to the top. Namba, however, was immensely frustrated that the Lugia were gone. Anyways, as for Ash and the gang, Richie and Oliver, they had returned to Luca on her boat, and watched as Lugia and Silver began to swim away into the depths of the ocean. Oliver began to cry, already missing Silver, but Misty comforted him, stating that Silver may return one day, stronger than before, and Oliver simply hopes that this would be the case. Luca then holds her silver feather in her hand as she watches the Lugia swim off, and declares that her great-grandfather was probably watching the Lugia from heaven, making sure that they would always be safe from now on. Just then, the two Lugia call out to Ash and the gang, Richie, Luca, and Oliver, as they fully swim away, and Ash and the gang wave goodbye to them, with Oliver stating his wish for the two to return. The episode then ends as we go to the next day, where Richie decides that he was going to stay on Ogi Island for a bit longer with Oliver to investigate any more potential mysteries, and then reveals that he planned to go to all the other world islands and investigate them as well. He then admits that Ash had grown stronger since their battle at the Indigo League, and promises that the two of them would battle the next time they met, with Ash agreeing, as the two trainers shake hands and admit that they learned a lot from each other. Ash and the gang then say goodbye to Richie, Oliver, Sparky, and Oliver's lantern, as Luca takes Ash and the gang on her boat to Transit Town, so that Ash and the gang could finally leave the World Islands and go back to Olivine City for Ash's 6th gym battle. Since there was seemingly nothing else to do on the World Islands, now that the mystery of Lugia had been uncovered and the World Cup was completed. So, Ash and the gang officially set off with Luca to Transit Town, where they hope to take a ferry back to Olivine City.